When asked if Temple Grandin, a noted autistic author, speaker, and autism activist, could be cured for autism, she replied saying, "No, I wouldn't, because I like the logical way I think." Autism is a severely debilitating developmental disorder of brain function. It is characterized by a couple major symptoms, such as a weakened ability to interact socially, issues with communication, both spoken and nonverbal, and a severe fixation with unusual activities or habits. Autism usually appears in a child's first 3 years and has no cure. It can be mediated with antidepressants, tranquilizers, behavioral and speech therapy, and repetitive training to cultivate manners.
Can't touch this. Can't touch this.
As previously mentioned, Grandin states that people with autism think differently. In her book, Emergence, labeled autistic, she says that her mind thinks completely in pictures, no one thought without a picture. If people without autism have a 4-lane highway that constitutes thinking, reasoning, and perception, people with autistic minds have only 1 lane. To support this, Brad Rand, in his article, How to Understand People That Are Different, says that when people without autism look at a wave, they see a smooth, clear picture of a wave that goes into your head. But a person with autism might see a wave broken up into pieces or different colors or strange shapes. A person with autism may look at the same thing as a person without autism, but he may see something different. When Jim, a 27-year-old with autism, is asked what touching feels like, Jim states that it is not that it is necessarily painful, but it is intense and therefore can be overwhelming and confusing. In his interview, Jim reports that he is comfortable being touched by people he knows and trusts. If they respect my boundaries, and as usual, if I'm sufficiently alert and focused to process what's happening. In Medscape's interview with Temple Grandin, she says that when she was young, she screamed because it was the only way I could communicate. People with autism have hindered social skills. Eileen Parker says that she could spot someone with autism because they are like me, say little, and eye contact is rare. When Parker meets another autistic man and describes their first encounter with one another, she says there is no small talk, no details of personal lives until later, just sharing an intense personal interest in languages while we took turns not making eye contact.
Temple Grandin says that the most important people in her life were my science teacher, Mr. Carlock, and my aunt out on the ranch. She tolerated my fixations rather than trying to get rid of them. Mr. Carlock directed my fixations into studying science. Grandin emphasizes the idea that autistic children need to have early childhood intervention because it made all the difference for her. This kind of relationship, an encouraging one, with other people is beneficial for people with autism so that they can become a more properly functioning member of society.
I suggest that you hang. I'm in the club and the cut so many scenes.
Every time you take a kid into Walmart, they're screaming. The reason for that is that the fluorescent lights are flickering and driving him crazy. The noise in there hurts his ears, the smell overpowers his nose. Walmart is like being inside the speaker at a rock and roll concert. Grandin refers to a person with autism's experience as severely uncomfortable due to feeling trapped when they go to loud places with lots of people. Just a trip to the local supermarket or store can be seen as an invasion of personal space and uncomfortable to people with autism. Furthermore, Jim's parents report that he was not cuddly as an infant, and from the time they first brought him home, he seemed to prefer to be in a room himself. It can be seen that people with autism like to be alone. Although people with autism still enjoy the company of others, as Eileen Parker enjoys time with her hubby and time with other autistic people,
In Grandin's interview, she says that when she was young, she would pick the fuzz off the rug and eat it, and dribble sand through my fingers. I could remember just getting hypnotized doing this. If I had been allowed to do that all day, I wouldn't be here now. This is an example of a symptom people with autism have that causes them to have fixations on things that seem little and mundane to people without autism. They can do an activity all day and never stop, as Grandin mentions. Albert, a 27-year-old with autism, presents another type of example of how people with autism lose track of time. When Albert was in an intense attachment phase, whenever Albert was separated from his mother, he would sit on the rocking chair or on the couch and rock for hours until she returned. When people with autism have an intense attachment to something, or someone, or a practice like drawing, dribbling sand, or picking fuzz, it is difficult for that child to adjust when they cannot do the practice or see the person anymore. Additionally, people with autism not only use time as a coping mechanism, but use it to make the world inside their head. Brad Rand says that the world inside my head is quiet and peaceful, and there are no people inside and nothing hard to figure out. So it is a safe place when the real world gets too confusing. So if you see someone and he seems to be in his own little world and his parents or friends are letting him do that, they're letting him be in a world he likes for a short time. Lastly, a characteristic that is very different in people with autism are their memories. Some people with autism have a decrease in working memory compared to people without autism, while others remain unaffected. Still others have an even better memory than the typical person without autism, which is the case for Jim and Albert, who are said to have exceptional memories. What comes with an exceptional memory means that they can remember things from a longer period of time than people without autism can. For example, Albert said that he could remember when I was 1 year old. I was good, I didn't talk in those days, I just looked around. Albert also recounts his first memory. First time I came out when I was born, I remember the fresh air outside. I remember when I was not born, I saw nothing. I see getting brighter and bigger. In conclusion, people with autism experience differently than people without. They live with different sensory perceptions and have to act unnaturally and courageously to form relationships with other people who don't have autism, preferring to form relationships with similar people who have autism. People with autism have a different concept of personal space than people without autism, often preferring time alone and preferring people to back up. Lastly, people with autism experience time differently. Their perception of time impacts the way they can remember things and influences their desire to want to be in their own world, to maximize the time spent in their own minds, due to confusion about the outside world.